Hello, everyone, and welcome to the City University of New York's third and final event in our celebration of the chapbook, co-sponsored by the Queens College Library and the CUNY Affiliation Group for Creative Writing, Brooklyn, City, Hunter, and Queens Colleges MFA programs, and supported in part by the CUNY Office of Academic Affairs. My name is Kimiko Hahn, poet and professor at Queens College. Before introducing our first presenter, please note what an amazing group of people helped to make this possible, while I thank Kristen Hart, Chief Librarian at Rosenthal Library, Queens College, Leila Walker, Digital Scholarship Librarian, who constructed every aspect of the website and is coordinating this event with Tina Tam, Library Administrative Coordinator. Also, Jeremy Cherev, the librarian who helped me during the initial planning phase in 2019 when we were planning for a campus festival. Annie Tumino, archivist, with whom I'm working to develop a chapbook collection on campus. John Rice, affiliation group coordinator, and of course, my CUNY writer colleagues, Michelle Valladares, Julie Agus, Tom Slay, and Nicole Cooley. The idea for a chapbook festival came to me some 10 years ago when I wondered out loud why there seemed to be a resurgence of chapbooks. Lou Asikoff, poet and then Brooklyn MFA professor, mentioned that his students often made their own and gifted them to one another at graduation. It struck me that do-it-yourself and gift economy cultures were combining. Chapbooks were clearly a means to celebrate one another's work. For 5 years, CUNY enjoyed hosting a huge chapbook festival at the Graduate Center that included literary organizations, presses, and writers. It was quite a heady affair. During those years, one writer who became enamored of the chapbook was Peter Vanderberg. He was finishing his MFA at Queens College and soon after started Ghostbird Press. Now he publishes three titles a year. Before his MFA, he served in the US Navy, and he is currently pursuing a PhD in English at St. John's University here in New York. His chapbook, Crossing Pleasant Lake, is available from Redbird Press. His full collection, Drown Proof, from Black Centipede Press. And I believe all the information on various books will be posted in the chat at some point. This afternoon, Peter will speak about the practical considerations of starting a chapbook press and why he believes you should start a press of your own. You are welcome to post questions in the chat, and several will be selected for a Q&A afterwards. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you so much, Kimiko. So let me share my screen here. Well, I'm not sure my face will show up, so let me just quickly say thank you to everyone who made this possible. So good to be here. So good to meet Ashley and Julia live, my newest chapbook authors this year. Amazing. And Alicia, who I have met but not live. We've spoken on the phone a few times, but it's great to be here with you as well. So, all right, without further ado, and in all humility, because I'm so honored to be here, but I hope you guys just take my tips and my practical advice with a grain of salt, right? This is just my experience. Okay, so is this working for, yep, that's not the first slide. Okay. So, good to go. John, can you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing what I'm seing? Good, thanks. Thank you. All right, so Ghostbird Press. So the idea started, as Kimiko mentioned, when I was sort of wandering around the first, I don't know if it was actually the first chapbook festival, but one of the early ones at the Grad Center. And I, as she said, just totally fell in love with The whole spirit of the place, if you think it, you can make it. The variety of the chapbooks, that whole experimental energy that I got from all the authors and the publishers that were there, larger, more established presses that I had maybe heard of, and then it seemed like somebody who was making these things possibly in their basement, and I love that range. And I had liked making things. I had actually made a couple of little collections. Actually, was it your class, Kamiko, where you asked us to make those chapbooks? So I put something together, and writing makes me come alive. It's how I think through all of my experiences and memories, but making something with your hands really brings it into the world in a physical way that, like she said, I just fell in love with. So I got the idea at the Chapbook Fest and then started making it happen. And we published our first chapbooks in 2014. And Alicia's Ideas of Order and Disorder, Ashley's Urgent Where the Mind Goes Scattered, and Julia's Mother Cake are the most recent additions. And I'm so proud of these books. I can't wait to hear the authors read them live. And I think you'll all be impressed. I'll just mention actually the symbol there, the Ghostbird symbol, is kind of a funny story. My daughter drew that in my notebook when she was 3. And I asked her what it was, and she said it was a ghost bird. And I was just like, "Whoa, it's amazing! I love it." And I was like, "I'm either going to get a tattoo of that, or it's going to be the logo for my press." So I went with the press. Interestingly enough, she tells me that I have it upside down, and that it's a different way, but I just can't see it that way. So I don't know. I guess I took over her work, but she let me have it, so I have permission. Okay, that worked. Okay, so I tried to organize this brief presentation under a few basic questions. I'm assuming that if you're here, you're at least interested in chapbooks, and maybe there's a few people who are actually considering starting a chapbook of their own. If you're thinking about it, then I highly recommend you go ahead and go for it. First question I'm kind of framing this with is, why start a chapbook press? If you love chapbooks and you like making things, then you might want to start a chapbook press, right? Start a chapbook press to make chapbooks, obviously. And once you start doing that, the community starts to grow, and you can foster that yourself in a number of ways. But building community is a huge reason to start a chapbook press. Every time I have a launch event or attend something like this, it just reaffirms my passion for doing this. And of course, swag is always fun. That picture of the pen it was just one of the most fun early things I did when I started the press. I was like, I need pens with logos so that I can hand them to people. And it's very fun. Much like making the books, you have a box of pens with your logos and it's like sort of real. It gives you a little momentum, gives you something to hand somebody. So that's maybe another reason to start a chapbook press, but primarily the first two. The third one's a little bit tongue in cheek, but making books, building community around these books. If that excites you, I would say 100% just go for it. Worst case scenario, you start the press, you figure it's not for you after a year or two, and you give it up or give it away. It's happened before. There's still no labor lost there. So on the left is the launch poster for Joseph Legaspi and Sylvia Bieto's books. Sylvia was the recipient of the Birdhouse Prize in 2019. And Joseph had sent me a submission just out of nowhere, and I was like, I'd heard of him, I'd read some of his work, and the manuscript he sent was phenomenal. So I published both of those books in 2019. Great event at Poets House. On the lower right, that's Christine Ham, Robert Farrell, and Ethan Kaplan in 2018 at a restaurant that is not open anymore, sadly. I think it sort of took the hit of the pandemic, but Fatty's Cafe in Astoria was one of my favorite places in the world. Fernando and Sue were the most generous hosts, and that was sort of like the home for the Ghostbird events for a number of years. Phenomenal mojitos. What a great place. So if you've decided that you want to start a chapbook press, or you're thinking very strongly about it, the next consideration would be how do I start a chapbook press? What are the first moves? Um, this is a little bit simplified, but in a sense, just starting to tell people that you started or are starting a chapbook press really is a very important and first move, right? Just putting that notion out into the universe, telling your writer friends, telling your colleagues that this is happening. I guess once you tell someone else, it kind of comes to life, and now you sort of have to do it, and it helps you kind of commit to it. People will ask you questions about it, and you have to kind of come up with answers. And they start to gravitate towards that. They see that there's something happening, and they maybe want to be a part of it. So put it out into the world. And that, on the top right, that's my first tweet, June 9th, 2014. I'm going to make chapbooks illustrated by my brothers, James and Paul. My younger brothers are both visual artists. And I got that precious one, like possibly my mom. I'm not great with social media, but it's a way to get the word out. And then move number 2 would be to make your first chapbooks. And that could be something that maybe it's something of your own work. Maybe it's a class project. Maybe you decide to just give something a shot and see if you want to sew it, staple it, have it printed up somewhere. Sort of get a prototype going, get a sense of what you want it to look like, the size and shape of it. And then this is something that you can show potential authors. I could make something like this for you. Would you be interested in working with me? And once you have your first chapbooks together, or maybe you get your first publications out from other writers, have a party. It's a great way to sort of celebrate your efforts and the work of whoever you've published. That picture there is Rajiv Mohabir and John Reed Curry, my first chapbook authors, both brilliant and beautiful men, who actually John and Rajiv, I both met at Queens College. John and I started together at our MFA, and we've continued to be friends. And Rajiv is just a poet king and philosopher who I'm sure you've heard of, and you haven't, you should definitely check out his work. He's amazing. Okay, so tell a friend. This is the first big step. Social media, I'm sure everyone currently in the chat room right now is better than I am at social media. As you can see from my Twitter picture there, I have a precious 772 followers, and I'm following almost 1,600 or so. I love Twitter because it's a quick and manageable social media outlet for me. I also have an Instagram account, but I'm less active on that. Social media is a great way to get the word out virtually. John Rice is probably saying in his head right now, I know, that's why I've told you have to be on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but whatever you're comfortable with, I think would be a good start. Make friends also, right? If you are part of a program or you have some colleagues, going to Queens College for my MFA was the greatest thing that happened to me in terms of building communities with writers. And we partnered in, I think it was 2017, to get started with the 2018 first ever Birdhouse Chapbook Prize. And we published a play by Ethan Kaplan, who was a recent MFA grad. And I've loved doing that. I've gotten such interesting work from the MFA at Queens College, and just having that partnership, continuing that relationship with Queens College. I never wanted to let it go. So this is sort of a mercenary way to make sure they can't let go of me. Now we have a deal. But we have events, and we publish the work of recent grads and students like Ashley and Julia. Just a couple of other two, I think, useful resources if you're interested. The CLMP is a phenomenal resource, and they have a lot of opportunities for versioning chapbook presses, small presses, poets in general. But I would highly recommend join the CLMP, get in touch with them. They're very helpful. And poets and writers, I'm not sure how you feel about the magazine, but it has definitely has a good readership, and they let you sort of create a free page if you're a press. And that goes into their sort of database of literary magazines and presses. And I will say, once I set that up, the number of submissions I received and the quality of submissions definitely went up pretty quickly. People do check that out. It gets people to sort of check out your site and consider sending work to you. You definitely want to try to generate submissions as much as possible. Try to get as much as you can coming in, because the more you have to choose from, the better it is for your books. So you told people about your press, and now you're getting submissions, and it's time to choose and make some books. I think my biggest piece of advice for that is trust your instincts on this. Be honest with yourself. What do you want your books to look like? You know, what kind of chapbooks do you love? But also what's possible within the realm of your reality. I absolutely adore the sort of like, we handmade 50 editions. Each cover is a little different. I love those. I have many of them in my house. I just know that I didn't have the time or resources to perpetuate a press that would do that for the long term. So I chose to go with a print on demand service, which allows me to, you know, select the manuscripts that I fall in love with and work on the words and the design and the editing. And then, you know, the cover is original, but the printing is quick. They come to my house ready, beautiful. I can send them directly to my writers, directly to anyone who publishes or purchases them. And the aesthetic of the books has changed. They started out perfect bound square, as you can see the books on the left, and then with Kate Bryant's Personal Garbage and Alicia's Ideas of Order and Disorder, I switched to a little bit of a stripped down, which this was my initial format that I was going to use, just a saddle stapled smaller book, and I just decided to go back to that original idea and strip it down, and this is the current size and shape of my books. The last one over there, Chantani, is just something I made recently. My grandmother, God bless her, has passed away, and she was also a writer, and so we collected her essays, poems, and recipes, and just put something together for the family. But it's in the Ghostbird Birdhouse, so I put it there for us to take a look at in honor of her. Finally, have a party for your books and your authors. Bring people together. Creating community is really one of the most important aspects for me anyway. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Oh. Sorry. I'm trying to get back to that. Sorry about that. So on the left is the 2018 book launch that we held at Poets House. It was such a great event. Sadly, as I said, Fatty's had closed and we need to find a new home. And I reached out to Poets House. I was like, let me take a shot. I love that place. They're so beautiful downtown. Turns out they have resources for really small presses and poets, and there's a very small fee to have an event at Poets House. And it was amazing. I brought in my own wine. Staff there were super helpful and friendly. And we launched Sylvia and Joseph's book in 2019 at Poets House. And then a little bit earlier was, as I had mentioned, the first Birdhouse Prize, Imitatio, by Ethan Kaplan. That was a play that he had written in the MFA program. And we launched that at Fatty's, but also had an event at Queens College. That's a reading from his play. Really, really beautiful space. I think that was in Kaplan, actually. Clapper, rather, sorry. So as far as bringing people together, I like to publish at least 2, preferably 3 authors a year, and I like to launch them simultaneously, because if you can bring authors together at a single event, not only do they get to meet each other, and very often they'll trade their books, you get to hear a variety of voices at the reading, but they each bring their own entourage, which kind of co-mingles, and people get exposed to books that they might not have checked out if they were just coming to see a single author. So I love having kind of joint launch events. And I'm actually seeking a home right now, because Poets House is sort of on a hiatus as far as events go. So finding a place that can be your kind of home, if you're going to have a press. I mean, it could be a bar if you're friendly with a bar and a bartender or owner. It could be your backyard. But if you can have, I think if you can have a consistent space that's sort of where you have a launch every year or some kind of an event, it becomes sort of like the home for your press. And one thing I love about chapbooks is that it's this physical presence. And if you can also create a space, a place where that physical presence emerges every year, I think it's a good thing. That's one of the tips that I would offer. Okay, and finally, the top 5 tips I would give to you if you're still thinking about starting a chapbook press. First, be honest with yourself and your authors, right? Be honest with yourself in terms of what is possible. It's great to have ideals and big plans, and you should certainly pursue those. But I'm also a big fan of working within the reality that you dwell in, and making something that is going to be viable and something that's going to potentially last. You can always grow something that you make it, but I would recommend, maybe just start simple, and doable. And also be honest with your authors, right? I like a clear publishing agreement that tells them up front, this is the relationship I'm offering you. And this is, I'll at least give you this. And if I can, I'll give you more. But I think that's just a good practice to have generally, and certainly when you're entering into an agreement with a person and their work. I should double back there on submission requirements. Have a clear submissions requirements, on your website or wherever you're going to post those. And also know that people will ignore them. I still get full-length novel submissions. I think I had a film submission at one point. And that's fine. But you want people to know what they should try to send, and how long their submission should be, and what you're looking for. Be clear on that as well. Number 3 is develop a realistic publishing cycle. This goes back to sort of point 1 with be honest with yourself. Just kind of quickly sketched it out there, and I recommend that you start with the book launch. If you know you want to launch your books like mid-July, back it up from there and take a look at when do you want to accept submissions, when do you think you'd like to make submissions decisions. The revision and the proofing process, I would give that at least a month, just to be sure that you can have a couple of rounds of revision and proofs. Printing and assemblage, depending if you're going to do handmade books with friends, or if you're just going to send the file off to a printer, it depends. As for me, from the time I know my manuscript is finished to the time I want the books in my author's hands, I try to give at least a month lead on that, just in case we catch a mistake late or some change happens or something like that. And then once the author has the books, then I'm comfortable announcing the book. And then, planning a launch, you got to have time to obviously contact the event site, make a relationship with them, promote the event, and then enjoy it. Number 4, make your press financially viable. It might seem obvious. Of course, there's going to be an initial kind of investment that you put into it, but the sooner you can get your press to breathe on its own, the better. I have mixed feelings about submission fees. I feel bad charging people a submission fee, but I feel like if they get a book in return, at least there's a little bit of give and take there, right? I'll give you a book and you give me your book, and maybe we'll make a book together. So that's how I sort of morally justified my submission fees. But I will say the submission fees are what keep the press going. And then again, I would just recommend launch at least 2 authors a year. And if you can do that simultaneously, it'll really help to kind of make that energy and bridge that, create that community. Okay. Zoom is funny because I feel like I've just been talking to a screen the whole time. I hope you enjoyed. Are there any questions, or should I kick it back to Kamiko or Layla? Somebody else talk, please.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
I'm going to kick it back to Kimiko now.
Thank you so much, Pete. And by the way, on our website is a terrific video on how to make a chapbook with paper, needle, and thread. And that video is made by Ugly Duckling Press. Kind of chapbooks they make. A little bit of thread, a little harder than that. And also there's very fancy staplers. Like just put it right in there. And you can just use regular staplers too. So you can see, I am totally ready to make a chapbook. Little show and tell. And I think we're a little behind schedule because I've been chatting so much. Okay. We are going to do all the Q&A at the end of all the events. So I'm just going to keep rolling along here. Many chapbook presses have contests where the winning manuscript is then published by the press. We have 2 Birdhouse winners who will read from their new chapbooks. The first is Ashley Samaru. She is an Indo-Caribbean woman who was born and raised in Queens. As a storyteller and poet, her work is immersed in her mixed tongue, religious upbringings, superstitions, and cultural traditions that have made her into the red hibiscus she is. Her work has been published in Asian American Writers Workshop, Peach Velvet Magazine, A Gathering Together, No Dear, and more. She is graduating with an MFA in poetry at Queens College this May. Ashley.
Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be here and to be with everyone, to read with Julia and Alicia, and to hear your presentation, Pete. I'm very thankful that you wanted to publish my work and saw a vision for my work and put your passion towards creating this beautiful book that would not be here without the help of you, without the help of Nicole Cooley, Puka Paik, and Sarah Park. You guys mean the world to me, and it's just, I'm really thankful for everybody who made it as well. This year has not been an easy one with the pandemic, losing our loved ones, the grief over violence against Asian Americans and Black Americans in the United States, and whatever personal struggles we are all going through. But it's just, through all that ugly, there's just this beauty of us coming together and being together that I think that we can all hold on to. I just want to dedicate this reading to my Uncle Basil and my Auntie Tara. And I'm going to begin. Urgent, where the mind goes, scattered. I hate that I think of the small pellets of an arm scorched, unsettling into ocean floor as jumbies, without feet, but still tripping over a bulging pavement or floating like a dandelion before finding a woman's ponytail to nest. Or standing next to the dreamer still waiting. In a line by line retelling, an aunt says, Ajin Mosi and Jack Chacha and Dad Chacha, but Manasi Daddy. And I say, where my father? Where he gone? And then tell me he not here no more. We take him far away. But nobody sang for them. They still waiting. This one's face is a black screen. That one's eating matai at sundown, bellowing prayers out the window. Sky's the new mosque. Krishna breaks. Then an exhaust chokes down the street. Back home says curtain blinds would become missing for windows to become mirrors and faces to reflect. Faces are now plastic rimmed. No one made the wreath of carnations. If a coffin is pushed in an empty room, does it echo off bodies that aren't there? Someone decided this body can be a walnut shell opened. Someone decided these lungs don't need breath. Someone decided death is as easy as turning off a lamp. Someone decided that heat can exit from the feet, up the legs, and accumulate in the chest, release into freeze with one last exhale. Could you please turn the camera's focus? I need to see the stagnant chest, missing garlands and breath. I need to see if the birds picked their share of 7 curry. I need to see how they did the rites without palm leaves. I need to disappear. As in, I can't find words from my mouth, entering the stage, becoming the unremembered. Saturn's rings dropped onto my kitchen floor. Can you hear me? Is there anything you would like to say? This is a rebirth. Those who can't breathe aren't removed from hospital beds or left on the floor. This is how it's always been, isn't followed by pepper spraying the mind into numbness. Umber, coffee, hickory, chocolate-colored men aren't splotches from Home Depot that could be crumbled and thrown into the nearest trash can. Healthcare, improvement of breathing, treatment, recovery, impairment does not mean sending someone home to nurse themselves. Death is not a number, a percentage, an upturned line chart. There isn't a choice between living and being silent and living and being silenced. Your worth isn't determined by a person who read your hospital chart and suggested hospice care was the only option for you. There was never a call at 5 a.m. No one cried, "He passed away just a few minutes ago." I'm not sitting in front of a blank monitor after your funeral ended. The orchids by the windowsill aren't deflating. Someone called her back the next day and she answered the phone. No one had to open the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 and see what happens to a person after they become an empty barrel. We have birthday cakes with candles. Wine glasses can clink together. There is no such thing as a mourning period. The grocery store has zucchinis today. No one is allergic to chocolate. I can apply sunscreen to my arms. The cat came back for her kittens in the backyard. Our Amazon package is on our front steps when we open the door. Everyone's going by Gavin's house this weekend. Subway trains are always clean. There isn't furious clicking to exit the meeting. I'm heading to London next month. Here is the new weed you need to get rid of. Richie's place is selling tortas. We didn't have to hear gone, is gone, is gone, is gone, 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 gone. I'm searching for the ones lined with the blood of leather workers, floating just above black water, singing Pranajaya Par Vachanajaya, becoming stalks grinded into sugar, into teacup, given a colonized name, theorized as great-great-grandmothers escaping husband-made necklaces, purple rehomed onto their throats. Who are standing at the crosswalk, living in a studio with bodies divided by sheets on a clothesline. Retongued, imagined as fathers chanting, Mara, 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 after choking on an inhale. Who became jumbies banned from entering with a line of salt, faceless but resembling the skin peeling off my fingers, vibrating off the beat of the damaru, into recollection of roads, of trench muddy pants, of heads cracked open. Because you have lived, Because I'm not God, but neither are those who decided you were worth less than air-filled bags of chips or a chance to expand your lungs. Here you will live. Here they will make space in the mind and mouth for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Another important aspect of chapbooks is how immediate the publication can be. And you've just heard a powerful example of that, how Ashley's collection reflects what we are going through right now. That was just so wonderfully special. Thank you. Next up is Julia Johann Joanne Tolo. She is a poet and translator from Oslo, Norway. Her translation of Paul Helge Haugen's pointless novel, Anne, was published by Hanging Loose Press in April 2019. In addition to winning the Birdhouse Chapbook Award for Mother Cake, she has published 2 previous chapbooks, Holes of Silver with Ghost City Press in 2018 and August and the Snow Has Just Melted with Bottle Cap Press in 2017. She is the winner of the 2020 Hoyt Jacobs Memorial Poetry Award, selected by Alice Quinn. She works as a grant writer for the Artist Residency MacDowell. Julia, I can't wait to hear your work.
Thank you, Kimiko, for that introduction. I'm so glad to be here with all of you, and I have to thank Kimiko especially because she was my thesis advisor. So without her support and advice when I was writing my thesis last spring, I don't think this chapbook would even exist. So it was so lovely to hear Ashley read. Your reading was really moving to me, and I really look forward to hearing Alicia read later as well. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Peter for designing such a beautiful chapbook, and Ashley's is so beautiful too. The cover has a drawing by my mom, and I want to put it close because this drawing is called The Feelings Are Coming, and I think if you study these 2 figures, you can see the feelings expressed there. And there's one drawing inside as well that I'll show you, and there's 2 more. So I think I'm going to read both poems in the chapbook, and I wanted to tell you about how this chapbook came about because my mom really let me look at her journals, which has these really beautiful drawings that I found so sort of strange and evocative, and I really wanted to write about them. But the book also came about because I developed this obsession with birth and the words that we used to talk about birth and birth practices. And so I started to research those words a lot. And you'll see that show up in the poems that I'll read for you today. So I think that's everything that you need to know. And first I will read the poem Gently Scraped. Bright orange light, low fall sun, city streets clear as we drove to the hospital. Nurse helped me right away. Drank 2 extra glasses of water to get a better scan. Read online about what to expect. Size of a fig, bones beginning to harden, fists opening and closing, tiny tooth buds beginning to appear under her gums. Her. Miscarriage, 1580s, mistake, error. 1610s, misbehavior. See, miscarry plus AGE, meaning untimely delivery, 1660s. Meaning untimely doctor visits, meaning untimely purchases of cribs, Oshkosh overalls and tiny socks, meaning tiny useless things. Within minutes, thin paper on the gynecologist's chair underneath my butt. Within minutes, contents of my belly on a screen. Nothing left but an unmoving lump. Schedule D&C, doctor taking what belonged to me. What was I making? I failed to complete. Lining of uterus gently scraped. tissue examined for completeness. For 2 weeks, I've carried a 9-week-old fetus. For 2 weeks, no heartbeat, no movement, no growth. Doctor pointing to different things. This is my hand on your belly. This is the cooling gel. I'll show you on the screen. Don't worry, that big shadow, not moving. The expulsion of a fetus before it is viable, especially between the 3rd and 7th months of pregnancy, meaning too soon. Spontanabort. A spontaneous expulsion, like a spell, an incantation, maybe caused by coffee, strawberries, high levels of mercury in fish, high levels of doubt, highly ambiguous feelings towards the life being made, and a history of inadequacy and bad behavior. Still a few weeks later, I can poke my finger in the flesh of the belly and the belly pushes back. For a moment, I think there's someone in there playing with me. Body has not yet learned, empty. Miscarriage of justice, 1875, a situation in which someone is punished for a crime that they have not committed. How to use miscarried in a sentence. If a pregnant woman has a miscarriage, her baby dies and she... And then I wanted to show you this drawing by my mom. This one is called Adult Baby. And then I'll read the poem that closes the chapbook, Mother Cake. Placus, placunt, flat cake, based on plaques, plaque, flat plate, bushdackskake, birthday cake. Ancient Greeks made cakes with honey and nuts on birthdays. Placus, decorated with candles aglow like the moon, like goddess Artemis. Mushkake, mother cake. Bags torn and jars of jam shattered into millions of pieces on her walk from the corner store to our apartment. She comes home with blood on her hands. Why do all the bad things happen to me? In Brooklyn, I am reading her journals. I said I wouldn't, but I am. My mom used to say, parents are people too. Her journals reveal this to be true. Placenta, origin, a borrowing from Latin. Round, flat, spongy, vascular, oxygen and nutrients pass from the maternal blood structure, having a similar function in other animals, certain viviparous fishes, ascidians, etc. Birth, Old Norse, byrdir, strong feminine. The bearing of offspring, an act of the mother, that the birth might not have come out, but remained still in her. It expelleth the dead birth, offspring, obsolete. To banquet with your wife and birth at home. Umbilical cord wound around neck, doctors did not discover until birth had begun. Mother stopped, an act of birthing, sedated, cut me out so as not to strangle. When you were born, it was your dad who received you. Birth trauma. Oh, rank trauma of birth. To all appearances, purely physical birth trauma with prodigious psychical consequences for the whole development of mankind. Of the birth of her children, my mother writes, I wish I didn't hide my emotions when I was having my children. I wish I didn't try so hard to be good, to not make a noise, to not be an inconvenience. It would have been better if I had felt it. That's it. Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you so much, Julia. So great to hear young writers, especially during National Poetry Month, April. So thank you so much. It is an honor and pleasure to introduce poet, chapbook collaborator, and friend, Alicia Ostriker. How fortunate New York State is to have her as our state poet laureate. If I recited her bio, that's by the way on our website, it would take up a huge chunk of time. So let me abbreviate her honors by saying that she is a poet, critic, and has published 16 volumes of poetry, including Waiting for the Light, which received the National Jewish Book Award, and she was twice a National Book Award finalist. Her 1980 feminist classic and anti-war poem sequence, The Mother-Child Papers, was recently reprinted by the University of Pittsburgh Press. Alicia is known for her intelligence and passionate appraisal of women's place in literature and for investigating themes of family and sexuality, politics, religion, identity, and celebration of city life. I am especially grateful that she signed on over a year ago to put together a chapbook expressly for this festival. It's a hybrid work, and we will be able to hear her read and see, I believe, some of her own photography. Peter Vanderburgh will join her afterwards for a Q&A. So please post your questions in the chat, and time permitting, we will get to as many as we can. Okay, thank you very much, and welcome, Alicia.
Now I think I am unmuted.
You are.
So thank you, Kimiko. What a terrific event this is.
Peter, you inspire me. Suddenly I want to create chapbooks also and publish all the poets I know who I think are wonderful and inspiring and powerful and funny. And I could publish them. That must feel terrific for you to be doing. Okay. So thank you, Kimiko. Thank you, Peter. That was so interesting. Ashley and Julia, you are fabulous poets.
I have to get your books. I love the covers. Great covers and beautiful language, spare and gorgeous, both of you. Thank you so much. Here's my cover, and I think Layla was going to share. Yeah, here it is. The book is called Ideas of Order and Disorder. Thank you, Wallace Stevens. The photograph is mine. All the photographs in this book are mine. It's fun being a photographer and less anxiety producing than being a poet. This was taken on a 96th Street crosstown bus in Manhattan going east. And perhaps it kind of hints at what's inside the book, which is that it's sort of a journey, but really it's a sort of a meander of improvisations and silence. So if we can start, Layla, with the opening image of the Chinese lady is at the Met. You'll see that I love taking pictures of art, especially sculpture. And I fell in love with this image. Is she a wife? Is she a servant? Is a wife, in the era from which this comes, necessarily a servant? She looks as if she is acting the role of a good wife or a good servant, and you know that you don't know what's going on in her mind. The images in this book don't necessarily have anything to do with the text. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I see the Chinese woman as a real person and I identify with her. But then the text. It was exciting for me to be asked if I would like to do a chapbook with Ghostbird. Chapbook, the word to me implies experiment, and this book has been experimental for me. Dear ones, I am of two minds in this little book. No, maybe three minds. The eye mind leaps at images. The ear mind trawls for language. The spirit, if there is such a thing, is a fool for beauty, logic, revelation, the play between order and disorder, the silences between things. The photographs were taken when I first moved back to the city of my childhood, finally able to enjoy the spectacle as it no longer hurt me. I was pulling things off, ideas of order and disorder, clouds floating through glass, buildings sublime, ginkgos, the sopranos of trees, butter yellow, satin yellow. The words came without having been summoned, as did the photographs. I was giving birth to both. I don't know what makes a seed surge, what makes its arms wave, why poems when I have no idea. Next page. This is in Central Park. I thought of calling this image male and female. Probably that's kind of obvious, but I see them as dancing together. It is not necessary for you to know what you are doing. My childhood was spent in the 1940s. A war was on, a hot one, then a cold. But can we talk about the photograph as self-portrait? Can we say all art is self-portrait? Matisse, when he paints a reclining female near a window among blotches of red flowers, paints himself. Caravaggio, when he paints the severed head of Goliath, held aloft by the youthful David, paints himself. Himselves. All art is self-portrait. He paints his selves. Not necessary to know what you are doing. Vehicle, vagina, valve. They used to stand in a line or a little group behind me, my guardian spirits. They were female spirits, or maybe they were genderless. They encouraged me. Sometimes I knew they were laughing at me the way grown-ups laugh at a child learning to walk. And they were invisible, and I never saw them. Next. This is on my block, on my street, 97th Street, between West End and Riverside Drive. A society invents commandments, taboos, art, artists. It is all a response to loneliness, shame, ecstasy. It is all a fever, a feast, a feeling. And stone, that is also an animal. It is divided and subdivided and chopped up and dead. Don't say that. Chopped up and dead and paid for. Okay, can we go to page 14? Nope, back to 14. Yeah, thank you. It's a peony and it's my favorite flower. But when love floods a person, it cuts a canyon that deepens year after year, carrying silt away, leaving the person bare, naked. Look at her layers of brownish sandstone, ruby basalt, gray granite. When love washes over a person, it washes the person away. Next. These two flies were on my door and they held still for me. I thought maybe they were mating or maybe they're fighting, but they weren't moving a lot. The Navy SEAL. The Navy SEAL had this reputation of being tough. He wanted to kill people. He said so, and the guys in his platoon admired him and were afraid of him. He used the phrase, "burkas were flying," to describe a massacre of women and children. A reputation like that is worth its weight in gold. And yet, when he pulled out a knife and cut the throat of the teenage Afghani captive on the stretcher, some guys wanted to know why. "Fuck that," he said. "They do worse to us." Pulling the dead boy by his hair, he ordered one of his men to take a photo, which he sent to a friend. The photo was captioned, "I got him with my hunting knife." It went viral. Uh-oh. War crime? Pardon. Americans do not commit war crimes. No, I mean, he was pardoned by the president in 2019. I suppose you all remember who was president in 2019, but someday someone will have to look this up. And I wanted to point out that what's capitalized, the seal and is, and the ill of the word kill, the capitalized stuff reads seal is ill. Like posing with big game in Africa. Boys will be boys, girls will be toys. And that maybe applies to Hemingway. Did anybody here see the special two nights on Hemingway? Boys will be boys, girls will be toys. Next page, please. And this image, it's another sculpture. It's from MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And I don't remember who the sculptor was or what its title was, but I call it Wrestling Men. Disturbance, global. If something is being born in the space of this delta, tangled in this veil, we can't know what it could be. No point asking. Later we will see. Because we have always seen things ourselves, traveling through time, ejaculated through time, you might say, or circulated, which is quite different. Later, we will see new things ourselves being born into over time. Time speeds away like a shotgun car. Space remains. Tell me where you are, friend. Can you go to page 24? This adorable child was in the playground on 97th Street in Riverside Park. She had just been running in the sprinkler and her mom was holding her. Look at those eyes. Untitled, the long marriage poem. Future, no future, bridge, river, spotlight, skylight, daylight, night, light. What happens when things arise ecstatic from underground or underwater from the wreck, sprout or start to crawl? You used to be bigger, I used to be smaller. Nose to nose now. Next page. You, the window I see the world through. We dance the cooking together kitchen dance. And in fact, that's what my husband and I were doing all through this last year. We did a huge amount of cooking together because that's where we were. You, the window I see the world through. We dance the cooking together kitchen dance. And that bodega was on our corner and then it was gone. But I have preserved it for eternity. Riddle. The bowl says, fill me to the spoon. The spoon replies to the bowl, I empty you. The bowl says, fill me, fill me. Riddle. Two villages facing each other across a valley, both aflame. Next page. This image of a nude boy is the Italian sculptor Donatello's Isaac. This is from the Museum of the Biblical Image, and it was a show of Donatello's sculptures. The boy is Isaac, who thinks he is about to be slaughtered by his father. But he is rescued by an angel at the last minute when the angel says, there is a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. Slaughter the ram of pride instead of him, in Wilfred Owen's poem. Skip to page 33. And I think this poem kind of goes with that vulnerable nude boy image. I fought the law and the law won. A study in pronouns. He defied his dad and got beat up. He worked for the gang and got shot. They wished for war and the war came. She sassed her mom and got the ice treatment. We murdered the whales and our mother is furious. They wished for war and the war came. You falsified the data and the drug killed. She bribed the inspector and the building fell. They wished for war and the war came. We spent beyond our means and went broke. We pissed on Muslims and now they hate us. Everybody wished for war and the war came. I wished for peace and the war came. That's an older poem. I did a lot of wishing and marching for peace before we invaded Iraq. Can you go to page 36, please? Oops, I've got this differently. Okay. The poem is for Ellen Bass. How's my time? I think that poem is too long. Can we go to the next page? This is an image of the Jersey Shore. And we go back to love. And when love floods a person, it cuts a canyon that deepens year after year, carrying silt off, leaving the person bare so you can see their layers, the moony limestone layers, the basalt, the granite, the stripes of stone, the snake of the river far down. And then the next page, I take many photographs of people in the subway. I love the subway. I love the people in the subway. I love secretly and sneakily taking pictures of people when they don't know I'm doing it, which is unethical. So I guess I like being a bad person doing that. The model is Walker Evans. If you don't know his work, he took many people on subways who didn't know he was taking them. But the greatest contemporary subway photographer is someone named Andre Wagner, and you should look him up. I basically just thought this was a beautiful image. Untitled Climate Change. What was it I was going to say? Words gone back where they came from. I should say words gone back where they come from. I am wildfire crackling in love with the bright lights of the city, the doomed city. And I am wildfire spinning in love with forests, fields, coastlines as far as I can see, all of it doomed. Don't say that. Why not say it? Come on, why not say it? Next page, please. The drawing is a drawing of my own hand made by itself. I guess that counts as self-reflexive. The poems came without having been summoned. They came like trees, locusts, mycelia, signaling, so there. Who instructed us to do this? Listen to music, smell it, a perfume flying through time while time stands still. I say, bless those who bless. I say, curse those who curse. And I wait attentively for the next revelation or hallucination or white light. I leave the door unlocked, probably a mistake. I leave a sign on the door, gone fishing. Next page, please. Process. It was an experiment. I had hundreds of photographs to choose from, taken between 2016, when we became permanent New York City citizens, and 2020. I had almost no unpublished poems. A collected and new was due the following fall. The images in this book were chosen, while the poems, with some exceptions which are obvious, were not chosen, had no prior agenda, emerged unpredictably over a period of a few months, meandering. Meandering was the methodology. How to pair the poems and photographs was a question for which the answer was be intuitive, be random, don't try to understand too much. Let the reader meander from photograph to poem and back and forth, finding or failing to find connections. The bridge is the George Washington Bridge, which I often bike to. It takes me a half an hour from my home to bike there. Across the Hudson River, you see the Palisades, which didn't used to have those two buildings sticking up, and also it didn't used to have the bridge. And once upon a time, the Palisades looked huge and vast, and now they look like scenery. But change happens. When I was a kid, my friends and I used to walk across that bridge and then down to the shore on the Jersey side and have picnics. So the scene is somewhat diminished from what it was when it was natural, but I think there's still a little sublimity there. I hope so. So thank you all very much.
Alicia, thank you so very much. What an extraordinary look into the inspiration and production of both a chapbook press and the actual chapbooks. And Alicia, I love what you just said about your process for this book. It reminds me of a quote I read of yours, which is, "If I did not have teaching to do, I would not recognize myself." I love that quote. And we do have some time for some questions. If you would put them in the chat. I will take advantage of being on the screen right now and ask a little bit more how this was experimental for you. I know you began to describe your method more intuitive. How is this different from your other poems? Because I see the chapbook as a kind of outlaw zone, experimental zone, and I love that. Kind of less pressurized, perhaps. So can you describe a little bit more your process for this?
Well, first of all, the decision or the question that I asked, could I have a chapbook that had poems and photographs facing each other? I mean, that was the first thing. I never did anything like that before. And you said, sure. And Peter said, sure. So that was wonderful. That was, something I have never done before. And then my thought was, Well, I have so many photographs. Because I take them all the time, and then I weed them, and I keep the ones I think are the best visually. The visual is very important to me. And then I thought, well, I will just use photographs that I've done since coming to New York in 2016, and that was almost true. But then what should the relation be between the images and the poems? And I thought, what I don't want is illustration. I don't want the images to be a picture of what the words say. I want there to be just moving back and forth. I know I want basically short lines with a lot of space around them, a lot of silence around them, and for the space, for the silence to feel full. And I want to not know beforehand what I'm going to do, to take a phrase that comes, a sentence that comes, and breathe with it. To take the silence into myself and see what happens next. And it's not totally different from my usual process with poems, which is, I don't know what's going to happen next, and it's like crawling into the dark. But very different from writing prose. When I am writing prose, I have a plan, and I might break the plan, but at least I think I know what I want to say. When I have a poem, I get a phrase or a line, and I write it down and see what happens next, and I keep writing as long as the lines keep coming. But when I think usually the process is that I'm dealing with something I know I'm obsessed with, that I already know I'm obsessed with. Okay, here it comes, and I don't know what is going to happen, but I have the experience of poems solving problems, especially emotional problems, when I don't know how I feel about something, and it's all a tangle. And the poem, the further along it goes, the more it will reveal of something. In this case, it was more like, throwing confetti in the air. Where's it going to land? Not hoping for any kind of control, but just to see what would ensue, and to not try to be logical and not try to be thematic, but just let the various things that come to me or through me, let them do it. And one of my favorite lines is the D.H. Lawrence line, not I, but the wind that blows through me. I don't know how many people have met that line. It's in a poem of D.H. Lawrence's about being a creative artist. And I love that. And I hope that will always be part of my process, that I don't over control, but accept that I'm a vessel.
I love that. Such really basic writing instruction and process, but I think one that is so easy to forget. So thank you for that. It's interesting to me too, that very often chapbooks, I think, have, and books too nowadays, have a kind of project in mind or are a sequence. I've done that kind of book. I like that kind of book. But what I really love about your book is it's a collection of poems. There's no, and it's hybrid. And I think the hybridity makes it a piece and a project, if you will, but there's no overarching idea. And I think that for me, that's part of the kind of freedom that you gave yourself. And I really love that about the collection. Pete, I have a question for you, because you have a book coming out, a full-length book coming out from Black Centipede Press, and you have also had a number of chapbooks. So you're a chapbook writer as well, too.
It's a number.
So what is your process when you yourself are writing a chapbook?
I think at least in terms of my experience, I do have a project in mind, and I'll sort of collect ideas pretty loosely, but there's definitely a direction or sort of some central expression from which, you know, the poems will kind of grow or gravitate towards. But there is something random about it, and I do love the experimental quality of the chapbook. Once I get an idea, it also speaks to the general concept of form. I know it's going to be short. I have this space to express or explore some idea. So then there's like not a panic, but a real drive or energy to get as much as I can within that space, without overcrowding it. So I'm inspired by Alicia's serendipitous approach to her poetry, because lately I've been, really just project driven, kind of, I guess you would say. I have an idea and I'm researching from there and working from there.
I think it's important that we all feel comfortable with both, with both ways of putting together a chapbook. One could be, oh, okay, here's 20 poems I like, that feel pretty finished, which leads me to a question from the audience. If you, Alicia, if the idea is of finding the poem as it comes, the question is, if you don't know what's going to happen next, how do you know when you're done? So kind of general writing practice.
Right. That's a question that is often asked and can never be answered in a satisfactory way to someone else. But if you've experienced yourself the sense that it's finished, it's a bit like, those wooden boxes, well made, beautifully made wooden boxes where you feel the lid going on and it fits and it's smooth and right. And it's a sensation like that. That you can't, it's words, but you can't say exactly what it is, except that it feels done. But you can say when something isn't done. It's not done yet. It's not right yet. I need an image here. I need a metaphor here. I need an ending line.
Yeah, it's true. It comes with intuition, actually comes with experience, right? So it's intuitive, which you used that word a lot. Leila has a wonderful suggestion, and that is that we open up this same question of how both Ashley and Julia, if they would like to answer the same question. How did you put together your chapbook manuscript? I think it's interesting question because it's specific to a particular chapbook and writer. But I think it's also interesting because we can hear suggestions by way of these specific answers and models. So Julia or Ashley, would you like to try that? I also have another question specifically for Pete, but
Julia, Ashley, where are you?
Yes, I'm here. I think this chapbook for me was something very personal, and to be able to document what was happening as well as my own connection to it. I think that the way I wrote it, I needed it to be fragmented. I needed it to splinter across the page. I needed it to feel a little bit unfinished, but also in that silence, in that space, to feel like it was kind of complete, because it was embedded with all these emotions and everything that was happening, and it's still happening. So how do I put that into the words and onto the page? And I think the chapbook for this work was actually really important because it allowed me to think about page space and think about the idea of not having this expansive space, but having only this little trinket and this a little amount of time through these pages to be able to kind of cover the grief and the death and like the acceptance and moving on. That's what the chapbook and kind of these pages meant to me.
thank you for that. Julia, I know you're having a bit of a video problem there and you're back with us.
Yes, hello. Wow, it's been so great to hear the rest of this event. I think when I was putting this chapbook together, I was really happy that I had such a limit on space because, as Kimiko knows, my thesis was 100 pages, and there was just too much stuff, and I couldn't. I think I found a way to format it within the thesis that made sense, but in terms of like thinking about my thesis as a full-length poetry book, I had a lot of trouble in imagining what that would look like. But within this very limited scope, I was like, what are the things that I want to share in this situation? I want to share a couple of my mom's drawings. I want to share this essay that's at the beginning that really situates the reader in like, why are we engaging with his drawings? What is happening? And then I wanted to share one poem that sort of addressed this obsession that I have with birth practices and words used about birth, and maybe one that addressed a little bit more like how I'm thinking about all of that in the context of my mom's life and her journals. And so in that sense, once I sort of decided on those three things, I just had to select the poems, and the pieces that I chose were the ones that I thought fit the best together. But usually I have a lot of trouble figuring out how I want to order something or collect it together. So in this situation, it was really a blessing that it was that I was limited in the format in this way. And it's been so fun to work on the book with Peter. So I'm just really happy the book is in the world, and I can't wait to read Alicia and Ashley's books as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to wind up the event right now because it's 5:33. But I think hearing the words repeatedly, obsession, intuition, disorder, and order is a perfect place to end the evening. We can have the disorder of creativity and then the order of revision and of a chapbook. Remember my stapler and needle and thread. Thank you again to all who participated. Ashley, Julia, Alicia, Pete, What a pleasure, absolute pleasure. And thank you actually to all the presenters from our 3 events over the semester. And thanks to the administrators and also to the audiences. Leila, you are sheer magic. We are in your debt. And a special thanks to John Rice for working with me for over 5 years. He's been a wonderful administrator and curator of all things related to our CUNY MFA projects. John and I'm going to start crying. No, I'm not. We've had a great run, and I know he and I will conspire again to do other CUNY projects in the future. So, good evening, dear audience. We are all looking forward to being back on campus and to have the library open. When the library does open, please come and look through our chapbook archive. And meantime, safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. This was great.